This is Steamboat Willie, created by renowned artist and animator Walt Disney, and was released November 16, 1928, through the Pat Powers Distribution Company. Remarkably, it was the first Mickey Mouse sound cartoon with proper synced up audio. Upon release, it was an immediate hit. Looking at it today, it seems kind of odd how such a simple animation made so much money. But then, you have to take other factors into account. This simple animation with a tune synced up to it was revolutionary. It was the first of its kind, and truly something to marvel at in those days. Arguably, it's still something to marvel at today. This cartoon spun countless sequels, and even spawned new characters that would soon become part of mainstream culture. It's because of Steamboat Willie that Walt Disney was able to get the funds he needed to create his own company. It's Walt's short cartoon that was able to pave the way for Disney as we know it today. You know, colorful stories, full of princesses, great adventures, family, and friends. Disney has become imbued into everyone's life. And truthfully, it's hard to find someone that outright hates Disney. That being said, Disney is so much more than just a company. Disney has found its home in the hearts of many, and to many, Disney is a part of their childhood, a part of their life when they've never felt more free. Disney and its multitude of properties and stories brings families and friends together for an overall enjoyable, feel-good experience. At least, that's what it would seem like on the surface. While Disney may appear to be a family-friendly company on its surface, and for the most part, it actually is, it hides a dark, sinister side. One that the executives at Disney try their hardest to hide. Tales of theme park malfunctions, ghosts, original tales, and creepy legends to rival those of old plague Disney. These topics are considered taboo when it comes to Disney, and so many under the company will try their hardest to hide these truths. This leads many to only see Disney as a golden company, and it becomes a matter of only being able to see what the company wants you to see. But as the old saying goes, there's two sides to every coin, and Disney is no different. The Little Mermaid is one of Disney's cornerstones of magic. It's a beloved tale, adored by many for its songs, story, and themes of friendship and curiosity. Many fell in love with the story of Ariel. Many fell in love with her character. But very few know how disturbing the original tale actually was. In the original story, the beginning events of the film play just as you remember. The prince starts drowning, lost to the sea, only for the Little Mermaid to come to his rescue. The prince is grateful, but unfortunately has no clue who actually saved him. Commonplace in most fairy tales, the Little Mermaid falls in love with the prince and makes a bargain with the sea witch to allow her to grow legs so she can walk on land. However, this favor came at a price. For one, the Little Mermaid had to trade her voice for her legs, and only has one day to get the prince to fall in love with her, or she will die. To make matters worse, every time she takes a step with her new grown legs, she will feel as if she were stepping on glass. In a tragic turn of events, once the Little Mermaid found the prince, he announced that he was to be married to another woman. What's even more tragic is that he only fell in love with this other woman because he believed that she was the one who had saved him from his shipwreck. The Little Mermaid ran home toward the ocean, pleading to the witch to give her back her tail, to which the witch had refused. Worried for their sister, the mermaid sisters all cut their hair and gave it to the witch, so that the Little Mermaid could return with them. The witch agreed, and she conjured up a knife She told a distraught Little Mermaid to use the knife to kill the prince and have his blood drip on her feet. Then, and only then, would she be able to return to the ocean. Lamentably, she didn't have it in her to kill the prince, as she was still madly in love with him. To end her suffering, she jumped into the ocean and drowned, and magically became sea foam. I'm sure we all know the story of Aurora, the Sleeping Beauty. It's one of those Disney stories that made millions of young girls hope that one day they could be woken up by a prince, just as Aurora was. Although, I'm fairly certain they wouldn't want that if they heard the original tale. In the original fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty, the princess is destined to get her finger pricked by a spindle and die at a young age, 15 as the tale puts it. This, of course, is the result of a curse that Maleficent placed on the young Aurora. By this point, all seems relatively normal so far, right? Well, if you've seen the movie, you know that Aurora is eventually found by the prince, set to slumber as a result of the curse. It's then that he would place a kiss upon her comatose body, which would have awakened her through the power of true love. It's a cheesy scene that actually made a pretty significant mark on pop culture. Though, this is made only creepier by the fact that a kiss isn't the only thing the prince did to Aurora in the original tale. If you weren't aware, in the older tale, once the prince kissed Aurora, he fell madly in love with her, specifically her unconscious body. To be blunt, he kissed her, and then decided to have intercourse with the seemingly lifeless body of Aurora. After a few days, he came to his senses, and left believing she would never wake. Unbeknownst to him, she became pregnant with twins, and Aurora would only wake after one of the babies, who was looking for her breast to suck on, started sucking on her thumb, effectively forcing out the splinter left behind from when she pricked her finger. Beauty and the Beast is arguably one of the more famous Disney animated movies ever made. It's been re-released multiple times, featured in several games, retold in books, and even remade into a live-action film not too long ago. It's easy to see why it is so popular though. It has flawed yet lovable characters, a simple yet effective storyline, and the heartwarming theme of judging/loving someone for who they are, rather than what they look like. That said, it wouldn't make sense for it to be in this video and not have a disturbing origin, just like the other fairy tales mentioned thus far. In the original tale, Belle actually had two older sisters not present in modern tellings of the story. One day, her father, a merchant, was going out on a business trip to transport some of his goods to another kingdom, and he wanted to get all his girls a little gift. So he asked each one of them what they wanted. The older sisters asked for a necklace and a set of earrings, but Belle, being the kind, benevolent soul that she was, asked for nothing, and simply asked her father to be safe on his journey. Despite this, Belle's father insisted that she ask for something more. Reluctantly, she merely asked for 3 roses on a single stem. On his way back from his travels, the merchant was able to find the necklace and earrings, but was unable to find the roses. To his surprise, on the path he was taking back, he stumbled upon a huge garden. A garden that contained 3 roses on a single stem. After he plucked them from the ground, he made his way back to the carriage, only to find that there stood a huge beast in his way. The merchant pleaded, and continuously begged the beast to let him go. He cited that he was only getting the roses for one of his daughters, and so the beast let him be on his way. Of course, he only let him go under one condition. The beast let the merchant go, but Belle was to come to the beast's castle and become his wife. When Belle first arrived, she was cold to the beast, distant, and the two didn't really talk much. However, after some time, The two grew close, and eventually, Belle fell in love with the Beast, and the Beast fell in love with Belle. One morning, when Belle found the Beast apparently dead in the courtyard, she cried, and her tears brought the Beast back to life and transformed him back to his human self, the handsome prince he once was. In modern renditions of the tale, this is actually where the story would end. However, in the original, the tale has a far more disturbing ending. Belle brings her sisters and father to come live with her and her new handsome husband. After jealousy sunk in, the two sisters sneaked up on Belle and drowned her in the bathtub. Walt Disney's frozen head. This legend is one that is well known by the general public, and is actually pretty straightforward. The legend states that after Walt Disney died, the rest of the Disney heads, pun intended, removed Walt's head and cryogenically froze it. The reason as to why they did so differs from legend to legend. One legend says that the head was frozen so that the Disney executives could have some kind of trophy of sorts. Another claims that they kept the head to worship, and the last claims that they kept the head cryogenically frozen to eventually thaw it out and put it onto a robotic body. Ashes. As the legend goes, back in the 1970s, a mother asked permission from Disney to spread her son's ashes in the Haunted Mansion ride. Disney obviously declined her request for safety reasons. Despite being told otherwise, the mother continued to spread her son's ashes inside the ride. There are many stories of people allegedly spreading a loved one's ashes in the ride, as well as in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. However, officially, it hasn't happened. Interestingly enough, a few years ago in 2007, there was a woman who was caught spreading something that looked remarkably like ashes, although she claimed it was nothing more than baby powder. Disney officials claim that there has never been an incident in which someone was scattering ashes in any one of their parks, or at the very least, they have yet to officially catch anyone doing it. Creole Bones. The Pirates of the Caribbean ride tends to be the spot where rumors and legends strive. The ride itself has spawned several legends, and even some ghost stories, but by far, one of the more eerie tales is that the ride originally had real human remains scattered around as props. Back when the ride was originally being constructed, Imagineers allegedly thought that the prop skeletons and bones did not look real enough. As such, they went to the UCLA medical school to ask if they could borrow some real ones. Supposedly, these skeletons were propped up near a treasure chest. Another set of two played chess against each other, and another had a sword driven through its neck. These bones stayed in the ride for several years, until newer, more realistic props were acquired. Rumor has it that the skull and crossbones that is behind a skeleton in bed are actually real, never removed and exchanged for newer props. To make matters even more sketchy, a cast member said during an interview that the crossbones were in fact human bone, adding further credence to this legend. The Skyway. At Disneyland, Anaheim, California, a popular ride known as the Skyway closed in 1994. There were ramblings and discourse amongst Disneyland goers, as no one really knew why the ride closed down. Disney claimed that the ride, both at Disneyland, California, and Disney World, Florida, closed down because the cost for maintaining both was better spent on new renovations. Despite of Disney's official word, rumors began to spread that the Skyway was closed for a far more sinister reason. As the rumor had it, the popular Skyway was closed because of a safety concern, after a man fell from the ride straight to his death. Disney tried to hide the fact that this had happened, so instead, They gave the reason that the ride's cost for maintenance was better spent elsewhere. While this may be nothing more than a legend, there has been a death that came as a result of the ride at Disney World. In February 1999, there was a custodian cleaning the platform of the Skyway in Disney World. Rather unfortunately, another worker, unaware that the custodian was cleaning the platform, turned on the ride as the custodian was still cleaning. As one of the gondolas headed straight for him, he grabbed onto it to try to attempt and climb in to reach safety, but to no avail. As the ride left the platform and was roughly about 40 feet into the air, he lost his grip and fell. He was later pronounced dead at the hospital he was taken to. The Haunted Mansion. Months before the Haunted Mansion ride was greenlit for public amusement, Disney allegedly held an early viewing of the ride to several of its patrons. Many of them enjoyed the ride for what it was, but apparently, the early version of the Haunted Mansion ride was so terrifying that one of the patrons, who was actually invited to go see the ride, died of fright. The man started the ride excited to see what Disney had in store, but unfortunately, left the ride in a metaphorical casket. The patron had a heart attack and died midway through the ride. Because of this, the heads at Disney asked the Imagineers to tone down the ride, to make it less scary, all in an effort to ensure that no one else died on the ride. The Death at Space Mountain. Space Mountain is one of the more popular rides at Disneyland, and is my favorite ride period. The ride boasts a 1 to 2 hour waiting period as people wait to venture on the beautifully crafted space adventure. Although, it's not all fun and games. While the ride is a joy to sit in, standing is another story. Before the early 2000s, legend states that the safety harness on the ride wasn't as secure as it is today. As such, there were many incidents where it came off and patrons had to hold on for dear life. Thankfully, no one got hurt. Well, except for maybe one person. In the late 80s, a teenager who simply unfastened his harness as he was on the ride, and on an incoming turn, he collided with some of the track above him, removing his head almost instantly. Other iterations of the tale state that his head did not completely come off, as it dangled behind his back, facing the other riders. Corporate heads deny that this ever happened, but that only added more fuel to the flame, and similar stories keep being shared around. The Death of Debbie Stone. In 1974, Debbie Stone, a cast member at Disney World, met a grisly demise. At the time, the ride Carousel of Progress was being renovated to become a new attraction known as America Sings. The ride would have been innovative would it not have been for an unplanned mishap. The ride itself featured a rotating platform, one that featured several stages and theater performances as the platform turned. The ride was seemingly going to be a smash hit, and 18-year-old Debbie Stone was gleeful that her first job was as a hostess for Disney's new attraction. As she stood on the stage in the first theater, she got too close to the center of the platform, where it turned, and she got caught in the moving platform. She was crushed between the stage and the auditorium, and audience members were left in ignorance, as they could not tell if Debbie's screams were simply part of the performance. It's a Small World. In 1999, one day, late in the afternoon, cast members evacuated everyone from the It's a Small World ride in Disneyland, California. No reason was given, but park guests were a bit put off by the fact that the lights illuminating the ceiling were turned off, and only an audio cue played on the loudspeaker that said, "Disneyland thanks you for your visit. Please evacuate the attraction in an orderly fashion. Keep looking forward and follow the instructions of the staff. Thank you." The staff refused to say much as they escorted park visitors out of its gates, and to many surprise, police and medics were outside. It was an odd sight to be seen. What could have been so terrible that Disney had to call both the police department and an ambulance? Truth be told, no one really knew. That was until someone online shared what they captured on a camera. A mother on her way out took several photos to fill up space on her camera roll. When they were developed, most of them had nothing out of the ordinary. However, one of them, the very last one, was curiously aimed at the ceiling, and it captured a horrific sight. In the blurry picture, you could see the motionless corpse of a child hanging from the ceiling. The first death at Disneyland. The year was 1964, when tragedy first struck Disneyland. Up to that point, Disneyland had been open for roughly 9 years, without any incident. That is, until May of that year. In May 1964, Disneyland faced its first fatality. On the Matterhorn, 15-year-old Mark Maples had the bright idea to stand up during the ride, and it led to him falling out of the bobsled. After his fall, he remained at a local hospital for 3 days, until his injuries caught up to him. He died due to the severity of the trauma. An actual death at Phantom Manor. Phantom Manor, the sister attraction to the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland Paris, is one of the more popular attractions in Frontierland. It's a ghoulish, whimsical adventure filled with fluorescent colors and beautiful lights and effects. Despite its horror roots, you wouldn't really expect anything bad to happen here. After all, it is a children's ride. Well, not too long ago, in 2016, a cast member performing maintenance on the ride was electrocuted, which resulted in the ride getting closed down while an investigation was being held. Death on the People Mover. The People Mover isn't a ride entirely known by many. It was a short-lived attraction that carried people around Tomorrowland. Despite this, it was still fairly popular with many who experienced it. That said, it wasn't exactly built with the same safety parameters as the rest of the rides in the park, evidenced by the death that happened on the ride not even 2 months into its opening to the public. In August 1967, a 17-year-old, Ricky Lee Yama, was killed after trying to jump between 2 People Mover cars. As he lost his balance, he fell off the ride and landed on the monorail track below, where an upcoming train was heading his way. He stood no chance as the speed train crushed him and carried his body a few hundred feet for other parkgoers to witness. Come 13 years later, and another person, this time an 18-year-old, was crushed to death, attempting to hop between 2 People Mover cars. The Mob War. In 1987, a 15-year-old boy was fatally shot, caught in the crossfire between 2 rival gangs in a Disneyland parking lot. It began as a confrontation, before it quickly escalated into a gunfight. The 15-year-old boy was a victim of circumstance, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of the gang members who was arrested was convicted of second-degree murder, but the conviction was soon overturned. A stabbing at Tomorrowland. It was a hot day on March 7th, 1981, and the lines at Disneyland were abnormally long. Understandably, many people were cranky, but on that day, someone took out their anger and frustration in the worst way imaginable. While in line, an 18-year-old was fatally stabbed after a fight between an 18-year-old and the assailant. The 18-year-old reportedly pinched the assailant's girlfriend, and he retaliated by stabbing him, an injury that resulted in the young man's death. They drowned in the rivers of America. The Rivers of America, an artificial river that surrounded Tom Sawyer's Island, claimed the lives of two young men, both by drowning. In June 1973, 18-year-old Bolden Delrot was the first victim claimed by the artificial river, as he and his 10-year-old brother swam across the river. The two had stayed after the ride's closing time and tried to swim back to shore. Unfortunately, Delrot drowned halfway through the river. As for his younger brother, he survived by doggy paddling until someone came to his rescue. On June 4th, 1983, the river would claim its second victim. On grad night, Philip Strawhand and his friend hopped on a rubber emergency boat to try and swim it around the river. Unfortunately, it flipped over as the two took the stolen raft to a restricted area. Strawhand died that night, and his friend forever had to live with the horrors of witnessing his best friend die. Dolly. In 1984, Regina Young, known to her friends as Dolly, was on the Matterhorn when she fell off the ride and was struck by another bobsled hurtling her way. The impact killed her almost instantly, and the corpse was left there for several onlookers to see. Upon further investigation, investigators found that her seatbelt had been undone, but no one was able to determine if it was an error on Disney's side or if she had unfastened it herself. Regardless, she died, and supposedly, her spirit remains on the ride, and many cast members report that you can hear her crying for help late at night near the ride. Some people even claim that you can see the spirit of Dolly near the track that she died on, a track now known as Dolly's Dip to the cast members and anyone who knows of this bizarre tale. The Bellhop Ghost. Before the Guardians of the Galaxy ride was constructed, it used to be known as the Tower of Terror, a ride dedicated to the Twilight Zone. Those who worked there on that specific attraction would dress in bellhop attire. Anyhow, one night, during scheduled maintenance, one of the cast members died of a heart attack on the 4th platform. His ghost allegedly still haunts the ride to this day. Many cast members who worked there, and even some who worked there under the new renovated Guardians of the Galaxy ride, report lights flickering, a haunting wail, and can even hear footsteps on the ride when there should be no one else there. There is also footage of the supposed ghost sitting behind another cast member.
You are the passengers in a most uncommon elevator. About to take the strangest journey of your lives. Your destination unknown, but this much is clear. A reservation has been made in your name for an extended stay. Wave goodbye to the real world.
The Haunted Mansion Ghost. Rumors of people spreading ashes inside the Haunted Mansion are nothing new. However, none of them have been able to be proven true or false. For all we know, someone could have spread the ashes of a loved one inside one of these attractions, and we wouldn't know. In fact, this very thing is rumored to have happened at a haunted mansion in Disney World. At this very location, reportedly, a mother scattered her son's ashes along the ride, and it is now home to her boy's spirit. Many claim you can see the ghost of the little boy walking amidst the animatronics of the ride, and sometimes he may even hitch a ride on one of the buggies. In 2004, on the WDW Magic Forums, a visitor to the park shared the following photo. On the forum, he wrote, "As you'll see in the photo, after clicking the link, it appears as though a child is peeking his head out of one of the doom buggies and looking directly at me. Not only was he not there when I took the pic, there wasn't a child of his age within 20 people in front of me in line. And as you can see, he's only a few doom buggies in front of me. Not only that, what's he doing looking at me? There is no flash, and no visible light coming from me. It's all infrared, and invisible to the naked eye." The Monorail Ghost. If you recall, Ricky Lee Yama died after falling off the People Mover and onto the monorail. Every so often, people actually report seeing the ghost of the young man wandering about near the monorail. Some report that you can see him walking alongside the monorail, while others report that you can see him as he sits upon the tracks, gazing at the visitors. Mr. One-Way. Mr. One-Way is the name given to a curious spirit that haunts Space Mountain. How he died, or what he looks like, is often left up for debate. Some describe him as being a red-haired man with a red face, while others describe the spirit as a child, a boy dressed in 70s fashion. He tends to hang out by the queue at Space Mountain, and depending on which version of the ghost story you're listening to, he may speak to passengers, or ignore them completely. Furthermore, he only appears to single riders, and many have reported seeing him get into the ride, but disappearing without a trace before the ride ends. Walt Disney. If you weren't aware, above the firehouse on Main Street in Disneyland, California, there lies an apartment. This apartment was created when the park first began construction, as Walt Disney himself wanted a home away from home to keep an eye on the park. It was convenient for his work hours, as he was determined to make the park a success. As of today, you can opt for a tour of the apartment, if you'd like, during park hours of course. But at night, when the park is closed, the apartment's light is left on as a tribute to Walt. However, this wasn't always tradition. According to the ghost story, long after Walt Disney had died, a cast member who was looking after the apartment turned the lamp light off as she was finishing her shift. She went to pick up her coat, and as she passed the apartment, she noticed that the light was on. She was confused, as she thought she had turned the lamp off, but didn't give it much thought because she had to get home. As she left the building, she noticed once more that the lamp had turned on yet again. Frustrated at this point, she went back upstairs and unplugged the lamp, this time to ensure it wouldn't turn on. As she set one foot out the apartment door, she heard a voice that said, "I'm still here." And ever since then, the lamp near the window has remained on ever since. Cast members attribute the voice to the ghost of Walt Disney, and many other workers at the park also claim to see a spirit wandering around the premises. Allegedly, at night, you can actually see the spirit of Walt hanging out by the window, and sometimes wandering the park. The following footage is apparently Walt doing just that, wandering around the park, amused at his creation. Disney, and Disneyland, by extension, is a wonderful company. Their characters and stories are part of many childhood homes, and truth be told, it's hard to imagine a world without Disney in it. It's because of Disney that many of us have such fond childhood memories. In fact, one of my earliest memories is actually watching The Nightmare Before Christmas with my family, and to this day, it is still my favorite Disney movie. So, I really don't want to tarnish the good name of Disney, but I also think everyone should know the dark secrets, legends, and past that lingers under the Disney brand. It's never a good idea to forget the past. If we do, we'll simply repeat the same mistakes we've already made. It seems Disney has learned this lesson, and maybe so should you. Would you look at that? You learned a valuable lesson, just like in all those Disney movies. And with that, I'm off. Happy New Year, and thank you for watching.